House number 20-0-5777, Mississippi versus Anthony Fox. If there are any individuals who want to speak on behalf of Anthony Fox, now is the appropriate time.
Yeah, across the record.
Make sure that that microphone is on.
Can you hear me okay?
I can be just fine.
If it pleases the court, what I would like to do, if the court permits, I'd like to say a very brief statement on behalf of Mr. Fox, and then I would like to call just a couple of character witnesses presented in that fashion. I'm sorry. Is this okay?
The court reporter is having problems with hearing.
You can't hear me, ma'am? Can you hear me now? Thank
I can hear you right.
Thank you. Carlos Tanner, Your Honor, on behalf of Anthony Fox. Now, Your Honor, we are here today, as you said, for the sentencing of Anthony Fox. As this court is aware, I am new to this case. I was not involved in the trial. I was not involved in the years of litigation that led us here. I was brought on as of late. But if you'll indulge me just a little bit, Your Honor, I am fully aware of this process. I've been here many a time. And I understand that the courts do not charge cases. The courts do not indict cases. The courts don't investigate. Judges don't release. The court doesn't call witnesses. The judge, in any criminal case, is dispassionate, doesn't take sides. And the court's role is, I'm not minimizing it at all, but the court's role is to observe. The courts and the role of the judge is to take in the information and carefully consider and to call essentially balls and strikes. And it's not to minimize the court's role. I understand the important function the judges play in the administration of justice. But this is the part where the legislature and jurisprudence has granted this court wide discretion. The courts have long said that courts, as long as the sentence is within the permissible statute, the courts can do whatever it wants based on the information it gives. The legislature, in setting out statute, specifying elements and ascribing sentences, when they give a range, what that range means is that there are circumstances where the maximum might be appropriate. It also means that there are circumstances when the minimum might be appropriate. And so what obviously I'm asking the court is to please exercise its discretion to be lenient here. Now, I have practiced in front of Your Honor on numerous occasions, and I'm aware that anything that is submitted to the court considers fairly and reviews it closely. And that's why, since I've been in this case just a short while, I prepared a sentencing memorandum, which I know the court received. I trust the court read it. And I'm not in the position often to where I can even write a sentencing memorandum, to be honest. But in those occasions when I am able to do it, I try to do it every single time. The memorandum I submitted to the court goes through painstaking detail, or at least I attempted to include painstaking detail about who Anthony Fox is as a person. When the Fox family contacted me just a couple of weeks ago, I told them that if I signed on to this case, I am not representing a cop. I'm not representing any calls, anything other than if I sign on to this case, I'm representing Anthony Fox as a man. Representing him as a father, son, a brother, a person in the community. And in that week and a half span, Judge, I visited with him. I've talked to people from all ends of the spectrum, from cops to pastors to local officials to, from being candid down the street guys. Everybody vouches for Anthony Fox. Included with my sentencing memorandum, I carefully chose 48 letters. I can promise you I got a stack well larger than 48. And one of the things I noticed is that even people One of the letters, for example, that stood out most to me is a letter that was written by someone who did not know Anthony Fox until Anthony Fox arrested him or detained him. Through a series of happenstance circumstances, they ended up striking up a friendship. But even that person, when he saw in the news what happened to Anthony Fox in terms of his conviction, he sought out his parents and submitted a letter. So with that said, Judge, I know you've read the sentencing memorandum. I know you've read these letters, every word. And I don't want to be cumulative, but I would like to call just 5 witnesses, and they will be short. But I think, the court needs a snapshot of who this man really is, because there's no other way for this court to determine what an appropriate sentence is, not for a statute, not for a crime, but for a person convicted of a particular statute. So having said that, Your Honor, if the court pleases, and if you permit me to, I'd like to first call Mr. Ford Heyman, excuse me.
Ford Heyman. You want to put on your oath of counsel?
Please, Your Honor.
Raise your right hand for me. Officer Heyman, do you swear affirm that the testimony that you give on today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yes, okay.
May I please go? Thank you. Sir, would you please introduce yourself to the board?
I'm Ford Heyman, Chief of Police in Clinton, Mississippi.
Chief Heyman, how long have you been the Chief of Police in Clinton, Mississippi?
Since 2016. Yes, sir.
All right, so how long were you a law enforcement officer prior to becoming the Chief of Police in 2016 in Clinton?
This is my 22nd year, so I'm into my 22nd year, so I think it was.
Chief Heyman, I'm gonna need you, I know you're trying, but I'm gonna need you to put that microphone a little closer than maybe comfortable, but I need you to speak right into the.
Okay.
All right, that's perfect.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so you said you've been a law enforcement officer for 22 years, is that right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Do you know a man named Anthony Fox?
I do.
And how do you know Anthony Fox?
I met Anthony Fox in 2019. It was the spring of 2019. That's how long ago.
All right, and would you tell the court how you came to know Anthony Fox?
One day in the spring of 19, I called Jackson Police Department. I have a good relationship with the officers over there, and I requested the presence of a K-9 to come to one of our schools in the city of Clinton. And on the day that we had designated to be that day, Anthony Fox was one of the handlers that showed up. And I was able to meet him that day as he helped us, assisted us by running a K-9 in the school. And I was thoroughly impressed with how he presented himself as a K-9 officer, how attentive he was to his duties, how well he interacted with the staff, school officials, even the kids that day. And I came away impressed, and I was thinking to myself, I believe this guy could be a huge asset for the Clinton Police Department.
And based on that perception about his probability of being an asset to your department, did he end up becoming a member of your department?
He did. Over the course of the summer, we had a few conversations, and he declared an intent to come to the Clinton Police Department. And, we got started in the hiring protocols, and in November of 2019, we were able to hire him.
And how long has or did he work for Clinton Police Department?
since November of 2019, and he is employed today.
And would you explain to the court how closely you had an opportunity to observe Anthony Fox and how he goes about his business as a police officer?
As the chief, I should know how every one of my officers or our officers at the Clinton Police Department went forward. And Anthony started in patrol with us and quickly moved up to detectives and back in the capacity of a canine handler. So in that capacity, investigations and detective, we had a fairly close working relationship. I spoke with him and that group daily.
And would you tell the court, based on your observation, how well you would assess his performance during the time Anthony Fox worked for the Clinton Police Department?
He is a perfect police officer. I can stand up here today and tell you the city of Clinton is better and safer because of the efforts Anthony has provided.
And if you, even in light of the events that have occurred over the last couple of weeks, if you were in a circumstance where you had to make a decision whether you could hire Anthony Fox again in your employ, would you do that?
100% unequivocal.
What is his reputation amongst the other officers that are in your command, sir?
His character is beyond reproach. He's loved by all. He is a wonderful officer. He is attentive to his duties. He does them correctly.
Now, I pass the witness.
Chief Heyman, I just wanted to ask a couple of questions. Was Anthony Fox under administrative leave, or was he suspended at the time of the hire by Clinton Police Department?
No, sir.
He was not on administrative leave by JPD at that time?
When we hired him,
When you hired him, correct?
I do not remember if he was on administrative leave or not. I do know that we had spoken with JPD, and they said that in their interest, everything was satisfactory to their knowledge.
Okay. But you're unsure if he was on administrative leave at the time of the hire?
I don't know if he was or not.
And had he been indicted already at that time?
No, sir.
No further questions, Judge?
Very briefly, you mentioned protocols that you went through, and this is in response to the prosecution's question. You mentioned these hiring protocols you went through. Did you contact anybody to find out about these matters, and was Anthony forthcoming about what had occurred in the city of Jackson?
He did. He was very forthcoming, and we go to pretty stringent lengths to verify and investigate the officers that we hire. We talked with several different agencies about the incident. The U.S. Attorney's Office, Federal Bureau of Investigation, the AG's office, even the District Attorney's Office, and everybody told us the same thing, that there's nothing here, there's nothing here. We were confident that everything was fine.
And when you say you also got that confirmation from the District Attorney's Office, are you referring to the Hinds County District Attorney's Office?
I did.
No, that's all I have for this witness. Yeah, the next I call Chief Tina Wallace. Ms. Tina Wallace.
Yes, ma'am.
May I please go? Ma'am, would you introduce yourself to the court, please?
Tina LaShawn Holmes.
And what do you do for a living?
I am a retired 20-year veteran of Jackson Police Department, and now I'm currently in full-time ministry, and I have an investigative LLC.
Now, when you were a law enforcement officer, where did you work, ma'am?
I worked several different capacities. Started out as a police recruit, became a patrol officer, certified officer, worked as a detective in various areas throughout the police department. I was a precinct lieutenant, precinct commander, deputy chief of patrol operation, and deputy chief of administrative support.
And what law enforcement agency did you have these positions?
Jackson Police Department.
In the course of your work with the Jackson Police Department, did you have an occasion to meet Anthony Fox?
Yes, I did.
Tell the court how you came to meet or be involved on a professional level with Anthony Fox.
In 2011, I was transferred, actually promoted to acting lieutenant, and from precinct 2 I was a sergeant, and I was transferred to precinct 1, South Jackson, as the precinct lieutenant.
And was Anthony Fox in that area or?
Yes, he was assigned to precinct 1 as a beat officer at that particular time.
How closely did you work with Anthony Fox, or did you supervise him during that stint?
I actually worked very close with Detective Fox during that time.
And when you worked with Anthony Fox, did you have an opportunity to form an assessment of how he performed in his capacity as a law enforcement officer?
Yes, I did.
Would you tell the court what that assessment is?
Well, immediately I identified him as someone that truly was committed, and it wasn't about the cliche to protect and serve, it was truly instilled in his heart. And that showed based on his behavior, his conduct, and how he interacted with the community, and the community in South Jackson.
Do you know much about what his reputation was amongst the officers on your command staff?
Yes, Fox was well respected, and I believe still is well respected within the command staff.
I pass it with the John.
No questions, Your Honor.
The defense calls Mr. Dennis West. Yeah. While Mr. West is coming up, can I speak to my co-counsel? Thank you. Thank you. Sir, would you introduce yourself to Her Honor, please?
I'm Dennis West of South Jackson Football Program. I'm Dennis West of the South Jackson Youth Football Program. I'm also disabled retired vet.
Okay. Now, if I understood you correctly, sir, you have an organization called the South Jackson Byron Bengals. Is that correct?
Yes.
Right. And you said you were a retired military official. In what branch of the military did you serve, sir?
The Army.
And, sir, tell us about how you came to be involved or how you came to own the South Jackson Byron Bengals organization.
I started a football program in the military, and once I got out and came home, I started again here in Jackson.
So you're from this area?
Yes.
So in what year was it that you started the Bengals program?
I think it was 2003.
And the Bengals, about how many, what are the age ranges are your participants in the Bengals program?
Right now, it's 5 to 12. We've got with 3 teams, 8 on the team, a 10 on the team, and 12 as well as 15 cheerleaders.
Okay. And so the cheerleading program is also part of the Bengals organization? Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, sir, how many kids do you have in your entire program?
Boys, 73, cheerleaders, 15.
73 boys, 15 girls.
Yes.
Now, sir, can you describe for the court kind of what the demographics are of your organization, meaning, let me finish, meaning from what region or area are kids you work with, and could you describe how they fall on the socioeconomic spectrum?
We have kids from the South Jackson area. We have kids from the Queen area. We have kids from Byron area. We have kids from Crystal Springs. And we also have kids from Hayeshurst.
And what about the social work group? Most of the kids come from two-parent homes, single.
We have a lot of single mothers. Probably about 50% of the team is single mothers.
All right, sir, do you know a man named Anthony Fox?
I do.
How do you know Anthony Fox?
Anthony Fox is a coach on the team.
Now, how did Anthony Fox come to be involved in your organization, sir?
3 years ago, he brought his son to the team, and once he saw what we were doing and how we were doing the kids, he said he wanted to be a part of it, and he wanted to help it in the way possible. So we made him a coach.
Now, the Bengals organization and your program, it focuses on football, but there's also other sports teams affiliated with your organization.
Yes, we also have a basketball team as well.
Now, would you tell the court, you said Anthony is one of your coaches on your staff. Is this a paid position for Anthony Fox?
No, volunteer.
Would you tell the court how much time you, the other coaches, and Anthony Fox work with these children?
Well, normally during school, we Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, we are 2 hours a day. But during the summer, we go anywhere from 6 to 8 o'clock, 3 days a week during the summer when they're in high school.
And other than coaching, the whole X's and O's football, what is Anthony Fox's specific role in your organization?
He's also a disciplinary. We have a lot of single mothers. When kids get in trouble in school, whether it's home or being disrespectful, they have to see Mr. Fox. And when they see him, he usually punish them by they run extra running. Then out of that, he has a conversation with them and tell them what's important to stay in school, not being disrespectful.
All right. And is there any other? Tell you what. Yes, it is. What or how do you fund this operation?
We do fundraisers. We do fundraisers to try to do things. And, car washes, fundraisers, whatever we can do, they help do for the kids. Now, Mr. Fox, we have some kids, like I said, come from single home. He helped buy stuff for them. The ones that can't afford it, he makes sure everybody collects.
Stuff like, when you say stuff, I need to know specifically.
Like the shoulder bags, cleats, whatever we need. He did volunteer help.
Is your team just in a local, like a city league, or do you travel?
No, we actually, since COVID, we hadn't traveled, but we usually do. We've been to Georgia twice, we was planning on going to Texas this year. He also helped us get money for the bus, where we need to do to travel.
Sir, can you tell me the kind of impact, or tell the court rather, the kind of impact Anthony Fox has had through his volunteerism with your organization on these children? that you all work with?
He's made a big impact since he's come. We actually, the kids, our young has grown. Actually, we started off, when he first got here, we probably had maybe about anywhere from 45 to 50 kids. In the last couple of years, we went from 45, 50 to 73. Once a lot of people start finding out the discipline that we have as an organization, plus the stuff, the extra stuff we do, it helps with the organization.
Sir, do you trust Anthony Fox to deal with these children that are in your care?
I do.
Your Honor, I pass the witness.
The state has no question. Thank you for your service.
Your Honor, my next witness is Pastor Jennifer Beard.
Before I burn it, but not that you get on board and prove the whole thing that we got without.
May I please report? Pastor, would you introduce yourself to the court, please?
My name is Pastor Jennifer Beard, and I'm the senior pastor of Jackson Revival Center Church.
Where is Jackson Revival Center Church located in the city?
So we have two campuses. One is at 519 West South Brown Street. The other campus is at 4655 Terry Road.
And how long have you been senior pastor at Jackson Revival Center Church?
I've been senior pastor since July 24th of 2011.
Ma'am, do you know a man named Anthony Fox?
I do.
How do you know Anthony Fox?
I know Mr. Fox as a member of my church.
Now, when you say a member of your church, could you approximate for the court how many members you have at Jackson Revival Center?
We have 1,200 active members.
Now, when you say he's a member, is he just joined the church, or could you tell the court, could you gauge for the court what level of interaction you've had with Anthony Fox and how well you know him?
Sure. He's an active member of our church. As a matter of fact, once he and his family joined, and his mother and father came and joined. He joined late 2016, early 2017. He came for a while before he joined. When I first met him, I met him at the altar right after church. Another officer who serves in security for our church came and introduced him to me. And he shared his interest in serving on our security team. And so we met that way. Further dealings with him, we had a situation in the city where flooding was imminent in the North Jackson area. He called me, he said, Pastor, I have a boat, anybody who needs to be evacuated, anybody who needs any help, let me know, I'm here to assist. We did end up calling him, he did end up helping some people who called me another time. His mom and dad had an accident on their way out of town on vacation. We prayed, he kept me updated on their status. There's the times he called, his family had furniture to donate. We have transitional housing for women and children coming out of domestic violence. He had furniture to donate. We had a family moving who had completed the program. He offered to come and help them move and gave them furniture. Anytime we've called him, we've done different things. We serve as a host site for Red Cross when there's hurricanes or things of that nature in neighboring areas. In particular, one of the last ones that hit in Louisiana area, he came and served as security while we were helping to assist those evacuees coming in and out of our property. Times when we needed help parking and things like that for special events. Basically, anytime I call, he's coming. And anytime we ask for volunteers, he's made himself available.
You mentioned that he and his family joined the church. Have you had an opportunity to observe the dynamic or the family dynamic between Anthony and, say, his wife or his children?
as far as coming for prayer, different things like that, just obviously coming into trial, he asked for prayer. And let it be known, he wants to be a husband, he wants to be a father to his sons, he wants to be a son to his parents. He cares very much about his family.
I have one brief. Now I pass the witness. No question, John. The last witness, Your Honor, will be Ms. Mayor Fox.
Very well.
Ma'am, would you introduce yourself to the record, please? Would you state your name for the court?
Mary Fox.
And ma'am, what do you do for a living?
I am an executive assistant.
Right. So, you gotta speak louder. You're gonna get really close to this microphone.
I am an executive assistant.
Okay. Now, are you married, ma'am?
Yes, I am.
Right. And who are you married to?
Joseph Fox.
Do you have any children?
We have 2 sons.
And what are your sons' names?
The oldest is Joseph, and the youngest is Anthony.
Well, can I cut to the chase here and get straight to Anthony? Would you describe how close-knit your family is, please?
We are very close. With 2 sons, they're about 4.5 years apart. We do everything together. Their father, when they were younger, he worked a lot, and so their bond was strong. And as far as activities, we do everything together. We communicate daily. If we don't see each other, we're definitely on the phone with each other. And I don't care if we're in town, out of town, whatever. We make contact with each other on a daily basis.
You mentioned that your husband years ago worked a lot. Was your husband in public service as a career?
Absolutely. He is a retired firefighter. He is also a retired veteran from the military, and he is currently an EMT.
Your older son, is he involved in public service work?
Yes, he is a firefighter with Jackson Fire Department.
And obviously, Anthony similarly began a career in public service, is that right?
Yes.
Ma'am, can you, with the close-knit nature of your family, can you tell the court what type of father Anthony Fox is?
Anthony is a father who loves those boys. He, over the years, he has grown. He's always been a good father, but over the years, he has really put himself into trying to mold his boys into becoming what he aspired them to be, to have their own identity at the same time, to grow up to be productive citizens of the city. Those boys are his heart.
Yes, sir. Would you tell the court what type of husband you've seen your son be to his spouse?
Yes. He loves Gavin. When he first approached us and told us that he was considering getting married, we were not sure that he was ready for it. We, as parents, you know, you want them to
But he assured us that he knew his heart, he knew his mind, and he loved her, and he wanted to. Their thing is, both my boys, their thing is, they wanted to emulate what they saw with their father and I. And they wanted that for themselves. And Anthony has grown, I've seen him on tour from a newlywed into a man who has really stepped up to the plate of being a husband and a father. And if you ask his wife, she'll tell you she has no regrets in being his wife.
What about as a brother to his older brother?
Oh, I kid everyone when I say that my oldest has always thought that he was the protector of the family, and in his mind, he thinks that he is. But Anthony is the calm and the storm. Anthony is the one who brings stability, calmness, patience, no matter what the situation may be. And actually, so many people depend upon him, not just in our home, but also in our community.
I'm not going to try to belabor the report or waste anybody's time, but I've been practicing for quite a while now, and I never asked this question, and I might never ask it again, but I'm going to need you to tell the court about these dogs.
This, even when he was growing up, he loved dogs. I have always had a dog in my backyard when he was growing up, even when I didn't want one. And he would bring strays, he would bring whatever. And we would always kid that he elevated from bringing stray dogs to, I want to say stray people, but if there was a situation where someone needed somewhere to stay, or if one of his friends, had to be home for whatever reason, he would come to us and say, Mom and Dad, so-and-so need somewhere to stay. Did he stay here? And so there were many times when we ended up taking in others because his heart was that big.
And he eventually became a K-9 officer, right?
Yes.
And not to be too long on this, but I put photographs, I provided the court photographs of him with these dogs and such, his in action with the K-9, but I think it's important for the court to know what kind of person he is. When you tell the court about the instance that was featured in magazines and such with respect to your son, that singular incident involving Alpha.
Yes. Alpha was his heart. That was, I think, his first K-9. And they were true partners in every sense of the word. And Anthony was on particular call, and Alpha had been left in the car. While Anthony was trying to do his due diligence, the car caught on fire. And this is police patrol car. And Anthony, in the midst of the flames, got to that dog, and he got that dog out of that car. And that was actually even featured on one of the local news stations. But that is the type of heart that he is, that he has. No hesitation to give his life for his cause.
What about your son, and a lot of people wrote about this in the letters, the character letters. Would you describe for the court what you've seen out of your son in terms of his heart and willingness to serve the community?
It has always been his desire to serve his community. As long as I can remember, he's wanted to be a police officer. He's wanted to give back to his community. So when the opportunity presented itself, there was no thinking twice about what he would do. His community is everything. He is a man of integrity. He is loyal to a team. He loves people, and he loves his community, and he loves himself.
And one particular event, I'll wrap up this, aside from the service he's done through his job as a law enforcement officer, would you tell the court about this Build Better barbecue event that he and his friends put together, what that was, where it was, and, you know, how that served the community. Could you explain what that was?
Building Bridges Barbecue, it was an event that he and a couple of his friends got together within the community, and it was dealing with the homeless. And what they wanted to do was to show them that even though they may be hard on their luck at that particular point in time, that there were people in the community who still cared about them. And even though they couldn't do a lot per se, they did what they thought they could. And so that particular day, for that particular event, they got together and they had a band and they went throughout the neighborhood gathering homeless individuals to feed them, to cut their hair, because it made the comment, when you look good, you feel good. And so they had barbers who were out there who gave up their time, and that's what they did. They collected a slew of people who were talented in whatever area to come out and to help. They took their own money and they bought the food themselves. They had games and whatnot, and it was an event that lasted for, it was supposed to last, I think, for maybe a couple of hours, but it ended up lasting the whole day.
Last question, ma'am. How would it affect your family dynamic, if Anthony was required to serve prison time in that way?
In all honesty, that's something that I find very hard to even have to try to think about, because Anthony is a key component to our family dynamic. And without him, I don't know. I do know that in a day and age where, due to not their own particular situations or whatever, I do know that every young child needs to have their father in their lives. And I know that Anthony, his influence on his, not just his sons, but all of those kids that he comes into contact with, it would be a great loss for the community, but it would be an even greater loss to his family and to others.
I mean, the witness before, I'll pass it with some.
No questions, Your Honor.
That's all for the defense's presentation.
There are two people that would like to address the court, family of the victim of these 6 crimes. Ms. Betterstein Wade, Your Honor.
Betsy,
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Wade.
Betsy, Senator from Brown.
Did you want to bring the microphone to her, or did you want her to come over?
Come on, Brown, away. That's one that you don't say, but hopefully nothing else. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. I can hear you. Just speak clearly into the microphone.
Hold that microphone. You can hold it. Keep the face up. Keep the
You can address the court this way.
Yes, ma'am.
Jane Wade, and I'm George Ross's sister.
This is your time to speak, however you want to address the court. I'm not going to ask you questions, you say you want to talk.
Well, the first thing I want to say, I thank God for bringing us here this day, and I thank Judge Rude for giving 12 people the opportunity to hear each and every side of this. I waited for it a long time. All I wanted was justice for my brother. My brother, he was a man too. He might not have had degrees and had anything else. But one thing about George cared for kids too. If George see a kid somewhere and didn't have enough to get a soda, didn't have enough to get that, he would give the money out of his pocket. George, he was disabled. He had money coming in. And also, my brother, for that Christmas in 2018, it's coming to be 2019, but 2018, he went out his way to take his money to buy hoverboards for all our grandchildren and our family. Then when he had left, he went out in the community and gave them some. And George always would contribute if they want to have a little get together out there in the community because, you know, we came from poor families. We wasn't rich. We didn't have a dad living in our house with us to help us. My mom struggled every day trying to take care of us. But George was our big brother. He did the best he could. But he always, anything that he did, get in trouble, whatever, he said, no, let it go, and we deal with it from there. And I know George always told all our nephews, he said, get in trouble and you know you're wrong, just go ahead on and do what you got to do. And when you get to, you know, the course or whatever, you know, you just have to suffer that consequence. That's life. He said, whatever you do, you got to pay for it. And my brother, I know at his last, when he was saying, I had a stroke, Fox, why are you doing this to me? At that time, my brother was big right there because he must have saw that this was it, you know. I'm here, you know, I don't know where I'm going to go from here, but I just got to try to do the best I can. And he was asking for his life at that time. And I feel like he's a citizen, Fox is a citizen, everybody should get it, wherever it is, as a citizen, the same opportunity. I don't think it should be a pat on the hand for nobody. I mean, if one citizen can do the crime and do the time, I mean, I don't think the police officer, firefighter, whatever, I feel like everybody should be able to serve the same punishment. I don't think nobody should get a pat on the hand and say, yeah, it's okay, it's all right, we did it, but, you know, that's my job, it happened in my job, whatever. But as a 62-year-old man, and I understand they saying he good to the community, work for the community, do this and do that, but at that time, did he ever, as a 62-year-old man, when that man said, I had a stroke, did his heart, did that catch his heart to say, wait, let me try to help this man, even if he's breaking the law, let me just take him to jail. Let me just let the court decide to do whatever. I don't have to do this to him. I mean, it's three of us. He done had a stroke, and I know he couldn't move that fast. So I know he wasn't moving like a normal human being. And can't nobody even tell me that. But, because I saw him every day after he had his stroke, I was there on the 25th. We was in the hospital Christmas. I spent Christmas in the hospital with George. I saw him get up, I saw him walk out of there, and his never was the same, not at that time. He didn't. The doctor said he was going to get better. You know, that's all we had. They were going to therapy, and they were going to try to work on, you know, getting better and everything. And I know he wasn't going out here, you know, regular like he normally do. But whatever he did, or whatever anybody thought he did, if they would have just took him to jail and just let me came down there, whatever it was, I could have went to see him, because I could see him. He still would be living. But on my birthday, I had to hear that my brother is here fighting for his life. And what else, you know, I got, I'm waiting on him to come over and help me celebrate my birthday. But I had to call and say, George, I'm on his way to the hospital. When I get to the hospital, he on his deathbed. So I have some that we miss too. We miss George, the kids miss George. I mean, they miss George too. Because they go to their aunt and say, I need $20. I need this. Uncle's gonna give it to them. So our family missing something too. I mean, every family is missing something. And I just feel, I'm gonna say this, I just feel like she'll be treated just like any other citizen. If they would have did the same thing, and I feel like if it would have been their side of the family, they would feel the same side about George. If George would have incidentally had a gun and they said they thought he had in the car, ended up shooting him, killing him, I would be facing the same thing. So I mean, both sides have something to regret. And I hate we had to come to this point. But it's what it is. And all I can say is that I just wanted justice for George. I just wanted to know who actually killed my brother. And I mean, he was actually killed. Because blunt to the head, same side he had stroke on. He didn't have a chance. He did not have a chance. And all somebody had to do was think and say, hold up, this man still had a stroke. Back and think. And said, well, okay, just take him to jail. I would have rather for him just took him down to the jail house and locked him up. At least I can see it. At least I can say, George, hey, how you doing? But now I can't say, George, how you doing? All I can do is go to his graveside and say, hey, I hate this house to you. The day is his birthday. Me and would have been having a joyful time. But I don't have him. If he would have just died naturally, I can handle it. But not somebody brutally, just brutally taking him away from me. And I thank the courts for everything they did. And I want to say to the family, I hate to come to this point, but we're here. So we have to do whatever each of us feels in our heart. And accept it. I mean, when stuff happens to us in our family, we just have to accept it. And so, I just hope that the courts can see I'm hurting too. A lot that got taken away from me too. Thanks.
Any proper change?
No, you're not.
Court's indulgence, Your Honor. No further people, Your Honor.
Here's your last argument.
Number 7.
Okay.
Please, the court. Your Honor, as I said earlier, my I just move this afterwards. Thank you. Your Honor, again, I know the court has considered all the testimony that's come before today. I know the court has considered our sentencing memo and the character letters. I know too that the court is considering the testimony it heard during the actual trial of this matter. Now, again, I was not there during the trial, and I have not yet. And I was not here for that, and I did not yet get a chance to read the transcript on it. But I would ask the court, I would invite the court that if anything that has been stated today from any witness, any of my five or any of the defense witnesses, Your Honor. Yes, Your Honor. If anything has been said by any witness today, Your Honor, that does not, even if it's my witness, if it does not comport with what the evidence was at trial, not what somebody might have been told or somebody believes, every witness I had spoke to Anthony Fox's character. Now, we declined to cross-examine Mr. Robinson's sister. There's no need for it, I don't think. And I will be the first to say that this situation is tragic all around. George Robinson's life, it had value too. Nobody would argue otherwise. But the real question here today, Judge, is what is an appropriate sentence under these circumstances that the court has heard throughout this entire case? It is no accident that this court has broad and wide latitude. Court could sentence, anywhere within the statutory range, and it could be deemed appropriate based on what the court has observed, based on the court's analysis of what happened. But I think there are several things that the court should consider with respect to how we got here with these charges. Number one, the state, as the court knows, can go to the grand jury and get an indictment. There are thousands of crimes in the Mississippi Criminal Code. I think the crimes they chose not to present or they chose not to bring against Anthony Fox are telling. They didn't bring a crime that carried a specific intent. There was no willfulness here. There was no intentionality alleged. And that's before this court is considered, before the prosecuting authorities go to make charging decisions. So that was by choice taken off the table. The jury had a choice of something lesser than, which they rejected. Right? They had a chance to go after the grave by murder. They rejected it by definition. What they found was negligent, culpable manslaughter. I know the court knows those elements backwards, forwards, sideways. And what has to be said is no matter what was alleged initially and later taken out of an indictment by amendment, which was, we're talking about a jury saying that at worst, this was a negligent act. At worst. This court knows we respect the jury's verdict, we respect the process. Although we admittedly disagreed with their finding, but if the court were to look at where we are now, the conviction is essentially akin to the standard of a car wreck, negligence. There's nobody that could argue that Anthony Fox did anything intentional, Nobody could even argue that he did something at a higher level. By definition, we're akin to a car wreck standard. 99.9% of the criminal code requires a scienter much higher than negligence. And that's where we are now. And so the importance, I believe, of all these character letters, what these folks are saying, of this witness testimony, is that we're talking about a man who, Judge, the sentencing memo, I spell out in detail that this man, in just 9 years with JPD, won more than 70 awards. That's an extremely high and extraordinary rate of winning awards. He won Mississippi's top cop for the entire state of Mississippi once. He's won Officer of the Year in JPD. He's won Officer of the Month 3 times, Officer of the Quarter 3 times. He's only the second awardee. He was the second, out of all the people in this department, at the time there were about 300 officers, he was the second awardee of the Eric Smith Award. Highly important and prestigious award within this department because of who Eric Smith was and how beloved he was in this community and in the department. He's the second winner of that award, Judge. So these people aren't just talking about privilege. This man didn't come from privilege either. He was raised for the majority of his youthful life in the Verdant Addition. That's why when he and his friends got together to do, at a cost to himself, at the recruitment of all his friends and resources, when they did that event for the homeless, where they offered free haircuts, offered free food, gave out hygiene items, they did it out of their own pocket, and they went back to their original neighborhood, the Verdant Addition. So I'm asking the court to consider all these circumstances, consider what the testimony actually was. And Judge, I'm not sure I'm operating in the blind here in terms of whether the DA's office is even going to attempt to make a recommendation. I have one of no jail time. I have no qualms about asking for that, but I would let the court know, not pre-trial, but after a week and a half of witness testimony, the DA's office made an offer of 0 jail time. The court wouldn't be involved in that because, of course, the court doesn't get involved in those kind of discussions. But I'm saying, I'm not sure what they're going to say, but man, what a difference a week makes. A week and a half ago, they were ready to come to the court and not just say, because this court doesn't wholesale accept agreements between the parties, but they were prepared to come to the court and say that a 0 jail time sentence was appropriate. That's from them. Judge, we're not disputing that a man died in relation or in temporal proximity to whatever happened out there on the side of the street. We dispute the causation issue. The court is aware of that, but at the same time, we do respect the jury's verdict. But Judge, the court knows all too well the primary aims of sentencing. This is not an ordinary defendant, not because of some privilege, but because of his good works. It's not an ordinary defendant because he's already suffered a tremendous cost. The cost to his reputation that he spent all these years building, cost of a career. He's undoubtedly about to lose his law enforcement certification just with the fact of a conviction. And Judge, the punishment here is already severe on this man. And I don't believe, and I'm begging the court to consider that jail time for him might not be appropriate. That's all.
Stay.
Your Honor, the sentencing stages are very difficult, and it's a burden that the court carries to make an appropriate sentence. And it's one that is extremely tough to do. Now, we cannot lose sight that the victim in this matter is George Robinson, who was killed by Anthony Fox. The jury has spoken, they have given their verdict, and they have made that very clear as to the culpable negligence manslaughter. That is not ordinary negligence. That is culpable negligence. It is a negligence that is higher than ordinary negligence. It is something different. It is a criminal standard sorry, Your Honor. It is a criminal standard that the jury has found. So it is a little different. The other thing I did want to address with the court is in plea offers, as defense officer, counsel officer stated, those deal with acceptance of responsibility. Those deal with being accountable for your actions. Those deal with coming in and accepting the consequences of your actions. That's not happening in this case, Your Honor. A jury made the determination that Anthony Fox was guilty. And the court has sat here and listened to all the statements, all the witnesses, and knows these facts inside and out for 2 weeks. And the district attorney's office in the state of Mississippi feel that this court will make the appropriate sentence in this case.
Anything further? The court has listened to argument that has been presented on behalf of the defendant. The court has listened to character witnesses that have testified on behalf of the defendant. The court has listened to the state's rebuttal of the defense's counsel's presentation of the facts in this matter, as well as the sister of the deceased. The court wants there to be an understanding. This court has only but one responsibility at this point. Counsel for defendant stated it very wisely in saying that this court had a very limited role when it came to the trial of this matter. Both the state and the defense were given an opportunity to present their cases as they saw fit within the rules and the laws of the state of Mississippi. There were 12 people from different walks of life who this court did not know, who did not know the defendant, who sat for approximately 2 weeks and heard the same evidence that this court heard and observed. And based off of what they heard, the defendant was not found guilty of second-degree murder. Why? Because the jury weighed the evidence. They did what they were required to do. And rather than them find Anthony Fox guilty of second-degree murder, they came back with culpable negligence manslaughter. The law states that when there is intention, you will be found guilty of the charge of murder. And you can go within those classifications. But when there wasn't an intention, and there was a death that occurred, that is manslaughter. So the jury did their job. They gave the testimony and the evidence the weight that they felt that it deserved, based off of the jury instructions that were presented by both counsel for the defendant and the state. Having considered that, having considered these 58 letters that were presented on behalf of Officer Fox, this court doesn't dispute that Officer Fox isn't a man, a stand-up man in his position as law enforcement in other community. But what this court's responsibility is to determine the sentence for the act that was committed at the time that is alleged in the indictment, and that he was found guilty of. Not basing a sentence on what he's done in the past leading up to that point, but what happened that ultimately led to the death of George Robinson. You're absolutely correct, Counselor. I read the memorandum, and I read all 48 character letters, and there was but one character letter that was provided by Elder Lacey Coleman Jr. that even acknowledged that a man lost his life. Out of all 48 letters,
only one spoke to the fact that there is a man that is no longer here, that nobody can speak on behalf of other than his family. This has gotten so convoluted because there are two families that have been affected by the events of that evening. Not one, but two. The court understands that Officer Fox has a family, and every defendant that stands before this court has a family. The court understands that Officer Fox didn't wake up that morning with the intention of what occurred. But every defendant that stands before this court generally has that same mindset. And the Lady of Justice is blind to all of that. She's blind to position. She's blind to sexual orientation. She's blind to your color of skin. She is blind to all of that. When a person stands before this court, I don't look at them in the position that they held in the community. I look at them as what they are. He is a man who has no title in this courtroom, like any other man that stands before this court, and any woman that stands before this court. And to ask a special privilege be given because of that is an affront to the jury. The jury knew what his role was in the community. They knew what his position was. And they listened to the evidence and determined that he was guilty of manslaughter. The court appreciates what has been presented during the trial, and counsel, you asked the court. And there were letters in here that asked the court to consider the testimony in this matter. There was even one person that said to reverse the verdict in this matter because the evidence didn't fit the crime. A person who was not even present in this court, doesn't even live in the state of Mississippi. Because they love this man, I understand that, but someone also loves the decedent. In considering the request to look at the evidence in this matter, there were two eyewitnesses that testified. There were police officers that testified. There was cross-examination that occurred of every witness that was put on the stand. And every witness that was put on the stand, based off of the verdict that came down, weren't being truthful. Now, the court certainly will consider the evidence. And the court is going to consider what has been presented here on today. But as the court has indicated, the laws of justice are blind. With that being said, Officer Fox, you need to rise for sentencing. Officer Fox, this court believes that every person that has submitted a character reference letter on your behalf knows you to be that person. This court has no reason to refute that. But the position of the court is one to see all that appear before it equally. This court cannot and will not begin a precedent of discriminating because of a person's position in the community, because of who they know, because of where they live, because of their status in life. This court took an oath not to do so, and this court stands firmly on that. With that being said, the court also considers that we have a person that is no longer here. And as a result of that, what started and what ultimately led to the death of the person, George Robinson, that is no longer here, was your decision to veer away from the task that you had been given, which was to find the person who was responsible for the death of Pastor Longino. I believe that is his name. But for some reason, you decided to veer off course and to take it upon yourself to engage with Mr. Robinson. Even after what occurred, he wasn't even charged with a felony. This gentleman lost his life for misdemeanor. And the court understands that there were two others that appeared before a different judge. This court will not take into consideration or won't even dare to try to understand what happened in that courtroom. Because 12 people did not have an opportunity to make the decision about the guilt or innocence of those two. But in this particular case, 12 people did. Officer Fox, you were found guilty by 12 of your peers. You were found guilty of the crime of culpable negligence manslaughter. The court, in considering everything that has been presented here today, is going to sentence you to a term of 20 years in the Mississippi Department of Corrections. The court is going to suspend 15 of those years. You will serve 5. When you are released, you will be placed on 5 years of supervised probation. That is the order of the court. Anything further?
Not from the defense.
Anything further?
Your Honor, just as in terms of probation, we would like no contact with the victim's family, witnesses, and jurors to this trial.
Officer Fox, once you are released, you are to have no contact with the victim's family, any of the witnesses that testified in this matter, in addition to what happened as related to the jury, no contact, none whatsoever, okay? The court wishes you much success after you are released. Court is adjourned. You are remanded to the custody of the Sheriff's Department.